Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for popping by. So, anyone that follows me on Instagram knows that I love a Q&A. And until probably about like a year ago, my Instagram was like predominantly horses, but now it's like horses, infertility, IVF, life, pregnancy, and so much more. So, loads of questions that have been asked are around like IVF and infertility and things, and so I thought rather than answering them over on Instagram, I would do like a video because quite a lot of them are repetitive questions. So yeah, I just thought it'd be easier just to answer them like in one big video. So I've got a list here of the questions that are asked the most, I guess. There's quite a few, so I'll try and work through them and try and make this not too long. But yeah, so let's crack on. So the first question, which is asked quite a lot, is what is IVF? So IVF is short for in vitro fertilization. In short, basically IVF is where a woman is given hormones to stimulate during a cycle period. After stimulation's happened, the eggs are then removed and fertilized with the sperm outside of the woman, so like test tube, petri dish, whatever you want to say, and then they're then fertilized, they turn into embryos, and then they are put back into the woman, and hopefully it will end in a pregnancy. So the next question that I've been asked is, how did you choose what clinic to go with? So we chose the clinic we did because it was close by. Obviously we have to get a ferry, so it was one of the closest to us. We had also been undergoing fertility treatment for a couple of years before we started IVF, and there's a few things that aren't done on the island and they have to be done at specific clinics. So whenever we had to get those tests done, that's the clinic they would send us to. So we were kind of like really familiar with them. Also, it's a really good idea to, when you're trying to look for a clinic, obviously to try and find one that's close by, but also to look at their stats and things. The stats were really good. We'd been there before, so we had like some sort of rapport with the nurses and doctors and things. And yeah, we liked the clinic overall as a whole. So the next question is a minefield. What is the IVF timeline? So, IVF is different for every single person, and what I would say before going into IVF is that actually you might be given a set timeline to say, you're going to be doing a pregnancy test on this day. Yeah, don't stick to it and don't hold yourself to that day, because things change and it just might not happen that way. Although you might be given a timeline, it's always a rough timeline and it's never exact. My understanding is that there are two main protocols in IVF. So there's long and there's short. Now we did the short protocol because I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So they didn't want to overstimulate me basically. So we took the short protocol option. So I've kind of like got it written down here in a rough timeline of how our cycle went. So like I said before, we were on short protocol. It took roughly 2 months from the day of my first cycle. And for ease, I've just written it down so that the day of my first cycle was on, the first day of my cycle was on the 1st of January, which I think it was a few days after that, but we'll go with the 1st because it's easier. So on the 1st of January, you call up your clinic and you say, I've started my cycle. Great, that's brilliant. Within the next 3 days, they're going to get you in for a scan. So that scan is just to basically say, this is what happens and this is what the beginning of your cycle looks like. And then after that, they can then order your meds to like correlate with what you look like at the beginning of your cycle. So on that day, you're going for a scan, you'll have blood tests, and then you'll have any other different things that you need doing. So like I had an endometrial scratch. It just basically it's different things that can get you ready for your treatment. So that month then is kind of just like a waiting game. Like your meds arrive and that's kind of all you really do, unless you have any more surgeries or any more investigations and stuff that they need to do. then it's kind of just a waiting game until the day of your next cycle. So from then, you know, I would say that I came on the 1st of February. So I called up the clinic and I said, right, I've come on, perfect. So they then again, in them first 3 days, get you in for a scan. And that will just be able to show them that, yep, we definitely got it right last time, you're on the right meds, or actually, we need to tweak these slightly, we'll order you some more, or, you know, you need to decrease your dose or whatever. From there, you start your stimulation hormone injections. Again, this changes with every single person. I was on them for about 13 days. I think some people are on less, some people can be a lot longer. And in them 13 days, you go for a few scans so they can see how you're doing, how your body's reacting. They can say you need to increase or decrease your dosage. And they can also see how many follicles you're producing and how they are growing and forming and how many it's likely to be that they're going to be collecting on collection day. Again, everything can change. And sometimes, you know, people get overstimulation, even though it's not picked up on in the scans, it can happen. So there's so many different factors that come into it all, but this is obviously just how like a rough timeline goes. So you'll then go in for another scan on your last day of stimulation, and they will say to you, potentially, yep, you know what, you're ready to take the trigger injection. So basically the trigger is what starts off your ovulation, which then gives them a 36-hour time frame to be able to collect your follicles. So on the 19th of February, I then went in and had my egg collection. Now, this is where things can really, really change. So at my last scan, I was told that I had in excess of 20 good quality large follicles and that I was going to have a really good harvest, as Sean kept calling it. Things change, and actually on collection day they collected 10 follicles. Because we were having ICSI, only I believe it was like 5 or 6 of those were good enough to be able to be fertilized. Later on that day, we received a phone call just to say that only 4 had actually fertilised. Typically, it's then 5 days from collection that allows your embryos to grow and develop. And then on the 5th day, it will be transfer day. But it's so like crazy how things can change. And obviously, you know, we collected that many eggs, 4 fertilised, but actually on day 5, there was only one. And we only had 1 embryo left, and it was actually of only like poor to fair grade, so it wasn't great. The chances were really not looking great, but you know, luckily things do happen, and even with 1 embryo, it's still totally doable, I guess. But I'm digressing. So 5 days after collection, typically you'll have your transfer and you'll have an egg put back into your uterus. From then, it's roughly 10 days to 2 weeks until you can do a test or have a beta blood test to find out the results if you're pregnant. So we found out on, I think it was like March 6th or March 7th. So basically, it was just over 2 months from the first day of my first cycle to the day when we actually took a test. It was just over 2 months. And actually it went really, really quickly. But obviously, that's, like I said, it's different for every person. So I'm going to stop rambling on about this question now and move on to the next one. Okay, so next, how much did IVF cost? A lot. So if you're in the UK, it's different in different countries, I know that, but if you're in the UK, then all of the IVF, fertility, everything comes under the bracket of the NICE guidelines. So with that, each different county has a CCG, which is a clinical commissioning group. I've got it written down here. Clinical commissioning group. So our clinical commissioning group on the island say that actually you're only entitled to one NHS funded IVF round. And there are different criteria that you need to meet for that, basically. Different counties and different CCGs have different rules. So like some counties are allowed 3 rounds and their criteria isn't so strict. It's different, you know, it's basically like a postcode lottery, like wherever you live is what you're entitled to. So my main issue was my weight. It's all done on BMIs, and my BMI was 1 to 1.5, I think, over what it should have been for their criteria, which is about a stone. So say that would have taken me 2 months to lose that. So that's 2 months down the line. You then have to maintain and stay under your goal weight for the next 6 to 9 months. So say it was the longest time frame of 9 months, you're 11 months down the road now. They then put in your referral application for IVF to the clinic that they've chosen. So that could take a month, I guess. It could take 6 months. So it was an extra 1.5 years, basically. We didn't want to have to wait. So we're in a really fortunate position that we have friends and family to lean on and to borrow money from. And so that's what we did. So our 1 round, luckily we were successful on the first round, because our 1 round cost us roughly around £10,000. That was for a fresh cycle of IVF, ICSI, and also your medication, which when you get given your outline of costs, quite often it will say, you know, this is for IVF, this is for ICSI. That doesn't include your medication. Your medication's roughly around £2,000. Also taking into account travel costs. So obviously we live on the Isle of Wight. Everything has to be done in Southampton. The ferry is like £25 per time, and that's just me going over. If Sean came over, it was roughly 50. So, you know, it all adds up. And luckily, like I said, we've got parents that we were able to borrow money from, and we've been able to pay them back. But it is expensive. Next question. What made you do IVF? So I am infertile. We had been under a infertility consultant at our local hospital for a couple of years, trying different things like Clomid, and we had different tests and things done. But basically our only option at the end of that was to have IVF. And that's because I don't produce any follicles and I don't ovulate. So without the hormone stimulants from IVF, it was pretty much near impossible for us to get pregnant. But yeah, basically our only option was to go down the IVF route. So the next question is, how many injections did you have to do? So I don't know if you can see, but there's some in there. And then there's quite a few in there. So yeah, I had to do a lot of injections. It's different for different people. Again, some people have to do a lot more, some people have to do a lot less. And it just depends on your cycle and your treatment, basically. Okay, so what are the side effects? So the side effects I suffered were like tiredness, sleepiness. I was really, really bloated. I had a lot of gas and wind, which isn't abnormal for me, but I had a lot more than normal. I also put on a lot of weight during IVF, and that wasn't really down to anything else apart from the hormones. I was feeling quite sicky quite a lot of the time, so I wasn't actually that hungry. I wasn't really eating. And yeah, I think I put on about a stone during the IVF process. And yeah, I think that was down to the hormones, not moving around quite as much maybe, because I wasn't feeling great. I definitely think for me, the IVF process itself was actually harder, and I suffered a lot more symptoms than I have during pregnancy. Yeah, it's, some people say that they, you know, you don't really feel anything, and they just kind of feel normal. And then some people say that they suffer from so many different side effects. So not great, but not too many. Has there ever been a time that you wanted to give up? It's difficult. yes and no. So obviously we've been going along this journey for years now, and it's really strenuous on your mental health and your relationship as well. And yeah, there have been times where I've been like, actually, I could really give up now and I just want this to be done. But not so much in the sense like I just want to just push it to one side and that's it and I never want to try again. It's more of like, I just want to snap my fingers and I want to be at the end and I want to have my end goal sort of thing, if that makes any sense. But it's really emotionally, mentally draining. And anyone that goes through IVF or infertility, I think is just an absolute steam train and an amazing person. And yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna get emotional now if I keep talking about it. I'm just gonna move on to the next question. Okay, next question. Can you still work during IVF? Yes, 100%. I took off I'm trying to think what time I took off now. I had the 5 days off between egg collection and transfer. Just basically because they say, you know, you should just chill out and just be chill and not really do a lot. So I had that time off. What was the worst bit of IVF? It's really difficult because at the time it was like really exciting and I really enjoyed all of it, but I also hated all of it. And it was kind of like, I loved the fact that we were going through IVF and that we were getting closer to our end goal, but I hated the fact that we were going through IVF because our end goal was there, but actually were we ever going to get to it? Because it's, you know, IVF is all about unknowns and everything's out of your control, and what happens basically, and if it's meant to be, then it'll be. Love that song. Anyway, so I don't know, really. The worst part was maybe the fact that I had to inject myself. I hate needles, or I hated needles. I'm so much better with them now. If you've watched my IVF journey video, then you'll be able to see the first stim injection that I did. It took like a good 20 minutes for me to actually build up the courage to do it. I got quite emotional, quite upset because I really don't like needles, even though the needle wasn't that big. Yeah, so that was probably the worst bit for me, was the actual injections, I guess. Okay, so did you talk about IVF with your friends and family at first? Sort of. So I'm not very good at being the person that goes, I'm really not feeling great and I need some support. I'm kind of the person that sits here and I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm the strong, independent person. I don't need any help. I don't need any support. And at the time when we were like suffering infertility, I guess, and starting our IVF process, I didn't really want to talk to anyone about it. A few people did know that we were going through IVF. However, my main concern, I guess, my main worry with telling people at that point was that actually, if it doesn't work, you know, in a few weeks' time, or however many months, couple of months' time, people are going to be saying, oh my God, like, how did the IVF go? And it could have been that we were going to have to say, actually, it didn't work. And which would have been just heartbreaking, which is why I didn't really want to tell people at that time, and I wasn't very good at talking about it. Which kind of like leads on to another question on here, which is like, why did you share your journey online? So I actually set up an Instagram profile completely different to Diary of a Done, and I started that up and it was completely private, and that was just so I could sort of like share how I was feeling. And I also, all that I followed on there was predominantly infertility and IVF related accounts, so I could see what other people were going through and I could communicate and talk to other people. And actually that community of other men and women who are going through the same thing as you is so important to be a part of, because you can just lean on them people for support and advice and help, and just for them to listen to you, basically. So yeah, originally I didn't want anyone to know. I then gradually started to talk about it a bit more. We started to tell more family and friends what we were going through. It was kind of how I was feeling and how often we were having to go over for scans and things. It was actually quite hard to keep it a secret. And yeah, actually it felt really good telling people, and it was really exciting being able to tell people that, yeah, you know, like, we are going through IVF and stuff. So I think it's just, if you feel comfortable sharing, definitely share, because actually it's a massive, massive help, and it allows you to just get so much extra support. So yeah, I would definitely say, like, how I dealt with it in the beginning probably wasn't the best way, but how we then proceeded with it, and, you know, we did tell people and things, I think that was the best thing for us to do, for sure. So the other half of that question, actually, why you shared your IVF journey online, is kind of to promote that it's not something that you shouldn't talk about and that you should be ashamed of talking about, because actually it's your journey and it's your life, and if you want to discuss that and if you want to talk about it with people, then you should be able to. I've made so many friends through the IVF and infertility online community that I spoke to, you know, at the beginning of our cycles, and I'm still speaking to them now. Also through my Diary of a Done page, since I've been talking about, like, infertility and polycystic ovaries and IVF and so many different things, I've also had other people, who I'm obviously not going to mention, but reach out to me, and we've made, like, really good friendships, and we keep in contact with each other, and people let me know, like, how they're getting on, and it's just, it's somewhere for you to talk and vent, but some people are too afraid to share things, and they do look to different social media platforms to get that support from what other people are writing and from reading different things on there. So yeah, I feel like it's not only helped me from sharing my journey on social media, but it's also helped a lot of other people too. Okay, so the next question is, how do I support someone making decisions about IVF and infertility? Don't just tell them to relax, because that is not going to happen. And if I had £1 for every time someone told me to relax, I would be so minted right now, because, you know, that's just what people say, just relax and it'll happen. I've been relaxing for 3 years, Susan. Nothing's happened. And when they know that you're struggling with infertility, they'll quite often come up with the stories like I still get it now. My friend had IVF, and then, you know, afterwards she had these miracle babies and it was great. And then, or you get my friend did this, like, she drank this special tea and then she got pregnant, or blah, 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 blah. So many different stories. Yeah, them things don't help. As much as it's like, you think you're giving that person hope that it could happen, it doesn't help. So do not offer that sort of advice. I think, you know, just be there as someone to listen to and as that support, because it is a really difficult and stressful time, and it's so out of that person who's going through its control. And they might just need someone to vent to cry to. They might not want to talk about it. Yeah, so I think just be there as a support for your friend. Okay, so what was it like after collection? Collection was strange. So obviously you do your trigger, you go in like 36 hours after that, and they collect your eggs. So you're not actually put under a general anaesthetic, which I thought you were. You have like a sedative, basically. And the doctor basically says to you, you know, you can go to sleep if you want, you can stay awake through it, it's completely up to you. So eventually I've got really funny veins, and eventually they managed to get the cannula in my arm and gave me a sedative, and just like that, I was asleep. I literally don't remember anything. And then I slept throughout the whole procedure, and I then slept afterwards. Like, I'd basically, the bed where you go for your collection, you have to get up, get on that bed, and then after collection you get up again, and you go back into the like recovery room, but you have to get up and onto a different bed. I don't remember getting up and onto different beds. I don't remember having conversations with people. I was completely out of it. But you can stay awake through collection. So I guess if you can fight the sedative, you can stay awake. But it was a really strange experience. And then afterwards, I kind of felt like bloating. I was just sleepy, really. Like, I slept on the way home. I think we got home and then like I had an early night. I just felt quite bloated, a bit sicky. And then I just kind of took it easy for the next 5 days, really, until transfer. And the final question, which I'm asked all the time, which you shouldn't ask people, is, now you've had a first successful round of IVF, are you going to do another one? And the answer is, I don't know. That comes down to multiple factors, and that is that sometimes through having IVF and through having a successful pregnancy, your hormones and levels in your body can actually change. So it might be that I am able to conceive after we have a successful pregnancy. Also, second factor is money and financial. So obviously, we've discussed IVF is really expensive. We're also going to have a child very soon, and £10,000 is a lot of money to have to spend again, because we unfortunately only had one embryo and that was transferred. So we don't have any embryos left in storage now. So it is literally a whole new fresh cycle. So we're looking at another £10,000. So there's that factor in it as well. And there's also the point of, actually, do I even want any more children? Am I just going to want one? So I'm asked that question quite a lot. And the answer is, I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know how things are going to play out. We're just going to kind of go with it and see what happens. But that will be for us to decide, and for us to decide if we want to share or keep it to ourselves. So yeah. So I've rambled way too much in this video, but they are my most asked IVF and infertility related questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys really, really soon. Bye.